happen at the COP. This is the last day of the first week of the COP, and it's a kind of an important inflection point in the process.
That's right. Usually for the first week, the world leaders are here. There's a lot of platitudes from the floor. And then behind the scenes, it's a lot of technical place setting for the actual brass tacks negotiations that typically happen in the second week. So all of our concerns and trepidations that have been coming to the surface in the first week will or won't be borne out next week. Exactly.
So it's a good time to reflect on the role of civil society in this process. What do we mean by civil society exactly?
So the COP process contemplates, it is a party-driven process. So that means that nation states, people who are parties to the Paris Agreement and other agreements, are the ones who make the decisions that come out of COP. But there are other parties here at the COP. There are other entities here at the COP. And one of them is the other big one is civil society. People who don't represent their nation state, but that have a vested interest in the outcome of the negotiations. And that is the faith community, but it's also research institutions, trade unions, women and gender constituency, the youth and young adults, you name it, from other areas of our shared lives together, who have particular interest in the outcome of and particular expertise in areas that are being discussed by the parties. And so we tend to be badged as observers, and we go into the negotiation rooms as observers, not able to speak into that process. But then we come out and we use the information that we heard during those negotiations for a multitude of purposes.
That's right. So yesterday was a really good example, I thought, of the breadth of activity that civil society organizations participate in. It was on the first thing, there are a lot of, I would say, educational events, kind of workshops. Like if you think about going to a big conference in whatever topic, there are the plenary sessions, but there are workshops that are held by different organizations. And there are, what do you think, are there thousands of workshops?
Thousands.
Probably thousands of workshops that happen at the COP. And civil society is largely responsible for the existence of those workshops. So yesterday, the faith communities led by Lutheran constituencies held a side event on the human rights implications of loss and damage. Loss and damage, I think we've talked about before, and won't be the last time we bring it up. But Regina was the moderator of the panel. It was amazing. You can talk a little bit about what happened.
Absolutely. So it was sponsored by the Lutheran World Federation and the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, and also the All Africa Conference of Churches and Brahma Kumaris. And we spoke about the human rights implications of loss and damage, and it was sobering. It was sobering. The panelists spanned the globe, and what stood out to me is we got very clear on the fact that it is the role of churches, it is the role of the faith community to keep 1.5 alive. It is crystal clear that is what our siblings in the global south, in the Pacific, in Africa, in South America need for churches, and particularly northern, western American churches need to help keep that 1.5 alive. And that became crystal clear to me. I thought it was a great event, and I'm deeply appreciative to the sponsors for inviting me to moderate.
And you did an amazing job. It was sobering. That's exactly right. The next level of engagement for civil society and for us as members of the faith community was a town hall meeting that was held with the presidency. I don't know if you call it the presidency, but the presidency of the COP. So the man who has is a man this year, as is usually the case. The lead or the moderator of the whole event, and that is Sultan Al Jaber of the UAE in this particular case. He held about an hour-long town hall meeting with hundreds of representatives of civil society, and there were some people got to ask questions. It was very scripted. I mean, in most things like this in this event, in the COP space, most interactions between the high-level negotiators and civil society are pretty scripted. But even so, there was opportunity for some frank conversation. People asked pointed questions, and he was pretty plain-spoken, I thought, about what his hopes and concerns and ambitions for this COP are. One of the things he said was it's the role of the presidency to make the space for the negotiations to happen, not to micromanage the negotiations. So that is yet another kind of pointer toward why it's so important civil society be here. So the third interaction, and the one that maybe is the most significant for us as U.S. faith representatives, was our meeting with the State Department. So this was our first meeting with the State Department since we've been here at this event.
So what I appreciate is that the U.S. State Department has been in open conversation with not just civil society in general, but with the faith community in particular. We have an ear to the State Department, and Trip Talley and his staff take our calls, they take our emails, and they take us seriously. So we did have a meeting yesterday that was organized in pertinent part by Interfaith Power and Light. Grateful to them for spearheading that. And we were able to present our requests of the State Department in these negotiations. There were no surprises there. As I said, we're in constant communication, but having the physical piece of paper there laying out our requests on adaptation, loss and damage, and mitigation, I'm sure is helpful to them as they try to crystallize their positions.
Well, that's right. Susan Hendershot, who's the president of Interfaith Power and Light National, has done a really good job of bringing Interfaith Power and Light into the COP process as a coordinated U.S. voice. So what we presented was a letter signed by more than 4,000 Americans calling on the U.S. State Department to take a strong position supporting loss and damage mitigation, adaptation. So we presented the letter, and then our party head, Trig Talley, gave some comments to us that we understand to be public comments that we can take back to our constituents. And what they amount to is, we need to hear from you. It is in our American process, the way this works is the State Department is an arm of an administration that is instituted ultimately by voters. So ultimately, voters have to have something to say in the process. And if we don't mobilize them to say those things, the whole process sort of doesn't even get born. If the voters don't indicate this is a priority for them, then the administration doesn't have that to take back to its institutions, and the State Department and the other institutions of the administration don't have a way to operationalize it. And if Congress doesn't understand that this is a priority for voters, then Congress doesn't have an interest. It doesn't have a compelling mandate to act. So civil society really is sort of the rug that ties the room together. It's the glue in this process, and nowhere more so than in the United States.
I think that's right. I was able, even after that, I had another meeting with our constituency, our ELCA constituencies in Wisconsin, and that was their question, what is it that we can do? And frankly, we've been told over and over again, American voters are not environmental voters. We know that you care, and also we know that failing to deliver on that will not cost us our jobs. And as long as that is true, as long as that is true, we're going to continue to encounter problems in these COP spaces and in other international spaces where we're trying to solve the climate crisis. The world is looking to American civil society to bring about the mandate from Congress and the money and resources, economic and non-economic alike, that come with that commitment that we demonstrate at the ballot box.